Frankie, before we get into that win at Old Trafford, I'd like to discuss, I guess, the big news from the weekend was actually the fact that West Ham have announced that they're releasing 4 players. Now, there's actually a 5th player being released as well, which for some reason the club haven't mentioned. I'm hoping they do, though. So the 5 players leaving, we've got Danny Ings, got Vladimir, Aaron Cresswell, Lukasz Fabianski, and the 5th player, which they haven't mentioned yet, is Kurt Zouma. Now, it's easily forgotten about because he's out on loan at the minute, but he's still technically a West Ham player whose contract's coming to the end this season. So those 5 are off ski. So we'll talk about them individually then. We'll start with Fabianski. Do you think this is the right thing to do?
Yeah, I do. He kind of had his season for us. He sort of peaked, didn't he, through that? He was the league goalkeeper and Areola was the cup goalkeeper. And then all of a sudden there was that switch. And that switch marked the beginning of the end, I guess. And that's absolutely fine. Got no issues with that at all. Fantastic servant, has been really reliable, pretty steady, just very happy with what he's done at the club. So it's all great, but everything has to come to an end, as we'll probably talk more about as we go through each of these players. But I think the timing's right, and at some point you've got to move on. And I feel like this is the moment to do it.
How highly do you rate Fabianski in terms of the West Ham goalkeepers that you've seen play?
I would say that I think football's changing, and I don't think you get away with a Fabianski moving forward now. I think the role of a goalkeeper and what goalkeepers have to bring is going to be very different. So it was kind of the last time that I think Fabianski would work out as being one of that you would put in maybe a top 5 sort of goalkeeper talking point.
Yeah.
Is he the most exciting? No. Is he more steady than people like Ludik McCloskey were? He probably was at the end of the day. From a sort of shot-stopping perspective, I feel like he was really sound. Did he add the other things that football require now, distribution and stuff like that? That's where the argument starts to begin to fall down. But I think it's one of them ones where anyone who is maybe slightly younger than me and maybe don't remember some of those keepers of the past.
Yeah, I don't remember Ludo. I don't remember Ludo.
So I remember watching Ludo right from behind the goal when we were playing Leeds and watching him literally for the whole match. And, you know, he almost he was loved, obviously he was loved.
Yeah.
But I don't think everyone thought he was necessarily the best player. He was one of them type of players who the fans are really fond of because a lovely guy and everything else. But did we all think he was like an elite goalkeeper? Probably not. So, but yeah, if you don't remember some of those keepers of the past, I think it's a really easy to say, look, Fabianski's probably one of the best keepers that West Ham have had in terms of what he's brought to things and how steady he's been and how reliable he's been. But when you go back through history, that maybe as you start to name a few more and people who are a bit older than me and whatever else, they'd probably think, well, actually, no, maybe there've been plenty who would fill that top 5 ahead of Fabianski. So look, he's been super, super steady, super reliable, got absolutely, when he came in, you know, had that nickname Flapianski, just always had that sort of mistake in him and can be a bit calamitous, but we didn't see too much of that. Actually, he was, you know, a safe pair of hands, as it were.
Yeah, he's up there with Rob Green for me, really. That's probably my 2 favourite goalkeepers at West Ham. I don't remember Xhaka either. I think when Ludo was playing, I was still in nappies, so I'm not going to remember him. I only vaguely remember bits of Xhaka. Not enough. Again, I was a kid, so I can't really say if I would have him. But so, yeah, he's probably up there as one of the best keepers I've seen at West Ham. Obviously, like you said, older generation will be watching this going, now, what about Phil Parkes? Well, we didn't watch him play, so we can't really say what we think. But I think in regards to letting him go, I knew it was coming. I'm still a little bit concerned. It means we're not going to upgrade the goalkeeper position this summer. I can't see us changing Areola and Fabianski. And I'd imagine we're going to replace Fabianski with a free goalkeeper. There's always half-decent free keepers kicking around in the summer. And it might be that another Premier League club picks Fabianski up as their second-choice keeper for next season. So I'm okay with releasing him. I'd be shocked if we had Areola plus a keeper that's cost us over 5 million next season. So I'm kind of a little bit disappointed because although Areola had a good game at Old Trafford, I do think his saves sort of mask the fact that there was a lot of crosses coming to our box and Areola was rooted to his line for the majority of them. And I think there's still flaws in his game. It's perhaps not, goalkeeping position isn't the number one priority for me this summer. It's midfield twice, striker, and then the fourth priority may have been the goalkeeper for me, might have been a centre back. I don't know. I've not really thought it through that much. So yeah, well done, Fabianski. He's been a fantastic player for us. Moving on to the fullbacks, then we'll start with Coufal.
Yeah, same sort of scenario, really. When we brought him in, what could we all expect? I remember I did that sort of phone jacker-esque video on him when we spoke to a Slavia fan, and he sort of said, look, you've got a super hard-working fullback there who covers a lot of ground, and he felt like it was... The way that he described it is... It feels like it's a bargain from a Premier League perspective, i.e. what you've spent on a player and what you're going to get from him isn't a lot of money. But he actually said for a transfer from our league and from our team, we're also very happy with the money that we've got for him. So it was two different ends of the coin, really. It seemed like a bargain for us, but to them, they feel like they got really good money for him. So everybody was kind of happy. Obviously, whether it was the Souček scouting mission that got bounded around, whether there any truth in that, I don't know. But look, he came in, he worked hard. He's been very committed and dedicated to the cause. He's had a few moments where I think he's felt underappreciated, not by the fan base, but certainly by the football club. Effectively, he came in on a kid's contract. There are 18-year-olds in the Premier League that have got a similar contract as when we signed him as a first-team player. So I can understand why his nose was put out of joint a little bit. However, there is a counter-argument to that when he came to the Premier League, it was kind of a dream move that I don't think he ever really expected, and he never felt he would ever have a contract like that in his career. So it's really difficult to kind of look back on it and say, well, you know, when he came in, yeah, okay, we signed him as... I think we did sign him as a player that we felt would play a lot of football for us. I don't think we signed him as a risk. We always felt like he was going to be someone who'd be in and around the first team. He came in, he made that sort of side of the pitch his own, which was great. And then I think he then regretted maybe the length of the contract that he'd signed. And if he hadn't signed such a long one, then he might have been able to command a different, you know, a renewal and a different wage, and maybe things worked out different. But there's that one little blip in there for me that he definitely wasn't the same player for a spell at us because that issue was ongoing, and he did feel like he deserved more from West Ham. So yeah, that's the only little blemish there. Other than that, I think, again, we're going to talk about the other one, why he may not come from abroad. The pair of them, when you look at what we actually spent on them versus what they've given in return to West Ham, have both worked out to be very, very good signings.
Yeah, sensational signings, a pair of them. So Coufal felt like a panic signing that time because I remember Fredericks got injured. I feel like I want to say it was quite late on in the transfer window. It might have been just quite close to the season starting because it's two different things, isn't it? The season starts middle of August, end of August. I can't recall exactly when we signed Coufal, but I remember Fredericks got injured and Coufal rocked up within a handful of days almost, and it felt like, okay, we've just gone and grabbed the right back on Souček's recommendation, but he's turned out to be an absolute fantastic signing for us. I've absolutely loved him, and at one point he was one of the better right backs in the league, racking up the assists down the right hand side while Cresswell racked them up down the left hand side. A big part of our modern history, and one of my favourite right backs I've seen at West Ham. It's always been a bit of a weakness area, the right back at West Ham. I feel like we've always struggled to fulfil that part of the pitch, but he's been absolutely brilliant. And like you said, he's definitely felt underappreciated. He's spoken about it enough times and said that the club broke a promise to him. And I see no reason to not believe him. And I think that's poor form on our part. And, his boys, I've seen the footage yesterday, his boy signed for the academy, got called, they're all there, and he got called out and he went and signed and got his shirt and stuff like that. So he's proper giving everything to the football club on and off the pitch. He's been an ideal signing. And if every signing comes in and has the attitude that Coufal has, they'll do all right at West Ham. If you have that attitude and you don't make it at West Ham, it's because you're not good enough. But if you are good enough and you come with that attitude, you will succeed. I've not got a bad word to say about him. I think his time's up. I'm pleased that we're not renewing his contract. I think he struggled this season, just mainly against pacey wingers. But the problem is most of the Premier League has pacey wingers. It's just us that seems to not have too much pace in their side. But it's a massive thank you. And, that away to Frankfurt, when he just walked through the Frankfurt ultras to get to the away fans, and when we asked about, was he in danger or whatever, he basically said, well, if there's any trouble, it's them that's in trouble, not me. And I love that attitude. Then there's that picture of him at Old Trafford where he sat on the pitch by himself after the fans have left. He's waiting for the warm down. He's just sat there taking it all in. So, yeah, I love the bloke. It's sad to see him go. I think it's the right time for him to go. But I hope he returns to the London Stadium in future, whether it's an ambassador role or he becomes a coach after whatever. I hope that this isn't the end of his journey at West Ham United. It's just the end of his playing time at the club. Now, moving from the right side over to the left side with Aaron Cresswell, would you have given him a new deal?
The only reason that you could potentially put that argument out there for me is his performance at Old Trafford. But I don't isolate moments to justify a bigger picture, and it isn't the right thing for me. I don't think that in a real more competitive season, which, let's be absolutely honest, next season has to be better than this one. Has to be significantly better. And if you want a significantly better season next season, then relying on somebody like Aaron Cresswell isn't how you're going to go and achieve that. So while he may be steady, and I've said to you before that I think if we actually had this conversation last year, if you remember, and I actually backed Aaron Cresswell to be here this season and said, actually, he's one of the last breed, if you like, of people who knew what it meant to being around Mark Noble and going through difficult times and really know what it means to be West Ham. So I felt like keeping him around the club this season for that cultural reason. He's played more than I thought he would in the end. He's seen far more minutes than I thought he would see this season. And every time he's come on and done a very, very steady job. So can't argue with it. He's done far more this season than I ever expected. But again, it is time to move on. And I am all for people hanging around, and I'm all for squad players, and I'm all for reliability of people, that prop up a squad. And I know many people would probably have that sort of opinion of Cresswell, but for all the time that Cresswell is there, then it means somebody else isn't getting a chance to come through. And I know Scholes has been edged backwards at the moment. We're not quite seeing as much of him as we were for a period of time. Next season, in pre-season, I want to see him being the one who's, really going to put himself in to be that sort of left-hand sided player. And I know Cresswell can also play in the left of a back three, but I don't like that. And while nobody's necessarily exploited it too much this season, it would definitely be something that if I was an opposition manager looking at Aaron Cresswell playing on the left side of a back three, I would be attacking that it would just be a massive part of my game plan. So for that reason, the fact that I feel like another season is probably one too many. So no, good timing again for me.
We'll discuss the sentimental side of Cresswell in the summer at some point, because I want to do a video with you, Frankie. Basically, it's a very sort of hand grenade type video to do, which is Aaron Cresswell a West Ham legend? But not only Cresswell, I'm going to throw like Antonio and Souček into the mix as well and say, do you consider them to be, not for today's video, we'll do it in the summer at some point. For me, I would have given them a new 1-year contract. I understand why people don't want to. I completely get it, right? You don't have to try and convince me your ideas as to why you think it's good releasing him. I completely understand. The reason for me is I think he's shown in pretty much every appearance he's played this season that he's still capable at this level. I think he was brilliant at Old Trafford. I think he's been in recent weeks, I think arguably he's been our best centre back out of the four of them, Panos, Kilman, Tadibo, and Aaron Cresswell. I think he's done better than the other three. Now, do I want to see him playing week in, week out next season? Absolutely not. If we were to give him a new deal and not play him next season, I would consider that a success because it's meant that someone's coming in and performing well. And I appreciate everyone's desire to get the average age of the squad down. I'm on board with that. But it doesn't mean you have to get rid of all the older players. I think you can get rid of majority of them. But even if you were to consider well-run clubs, can we agree that Brighton's a well-run club with a really good squad, etc.? Well, they've got James Milner there. They've got Danny Welbeck there. They have 2 or 3 really experienced players in that squad to help bring the youngsters through and into the team. And I think that's what Aaron Cresswell will give us. And I appreciate people be saying, so you give him a contract to essentially be a cheerleader. Not necessarily, but I think he can contribute on the pitch. He wouldn't be my first choice, but I also don't think he's in the way of anyone at the minute, because I don't think he's in the way of Ollie Scarles, because I have no desire to see Ollie Scarles playing the left side of a back three. Likewise, I have no desire to see Aaron Cresswell playing left back in a back four. I'd prefer Scarles to do that, but I don't think there's any evidence to suggest that Potter would pick Cresswell over Scarles at left back. We've not seen it yet. So the best youngster for a centre back is Caelan Casey. I don't think Cresswell's stopping him getting minutes either, because if Potter wanted to give Casey minutes, he could, regardless of Aaron Cresswell or not. And I just think that if we are going to play a back three next season, which I suspect we will, I think it's important that you've got someone in that back three who's capable of travelling forward, just like we've seen at Old Trafford with Cresswell. That run down the left that heavily contributed to our opening goal. I'm not sure we've got someone like that at the moment. Tadebo's good on the ball, but I've yet to see him really driving out from the back like Cresswell has. Maybe the plan will be to put Wan-Bissaka back there and he does that role. I'm unconvinced that that's the plan. I think we'll keep him as a wing back. So I think we're going to have to replace Cresswell in the summer with someone that perhaps is more of a full back that can play centre back rather than a centre back by trade. I think it's a difficult role to replace, actually. And if Potter's going to stick with his 3 at the back, I think it's important that you have someone in there. If I provide an example, it would be Wolves under Pereira. They have player back 3, just like they did under O'Neill. But Pereira's got a rule that one of his back 3 must be a full back. Now, occupying that role all season has been Matt Doherty. I wouldn't be surprised if Wolves are looking for a full back this summer that can go in there and replace Doherty, but continue with how they're playing. So I would have given Cresswell a new 1-year deal. I think his wages are fine for what a Premier League player is. I think in terms of his leadership and his commitment to West Ham, I think it's absolutely fantastic. 12 years he's been here. I've got no complaints about him, and I think he's still capable of doing it on a Saturday afternoon. Moving on to Danny Ings, I think we can get this one over and done with pretty quickly.
Should have never got started, should it? It's as simple as that. It just should never have been. It was never the right sign at the time. It was never the right contract. It was never the right weekly wage, whatever. It should never have happened. It come too late. I know you was very, very fond of him.
Yeah.
In his heyday. But was he the right signing for West Ham when we decided to bring him in? It was always a bad move. And unfortunately, and actually, for all of how the signing has panned out and his time at West Ham, he's clearly a really nice bloke.
Yeah,
I've seen nothing but professionalism. I've seen nothing but the right things from him, to be honest. And at times when he come on, when we was really struggling with a centre forward and so on, he come on and looked really lively, really committed, even though he really weren't playing much football. So again, while the signing wasn't the right one, I don't think that's his fault, to be perfectly honest. I think he's done everything he could and has always been, anytime we've called upon him, he's been there and ready to come and play and done everything that he can on that football pitch. So I've got no complaints with him as a man, as a player. It just wasn't the right signing.
Yeah, I agree with everything. I was happy when we signed him. A, because I've been fond of him for years, and B, we were in a relegation battle at the time, and I thought, right, we're getting in a goal scorer here, and that's going to hopefully get us out the bloody relegation battle. But I naively thought that we'd change the way we play to accommodate Danny Ings. The problem was we did it. We continued playing with him as a lone striker, which he hadn't been able to do in his career. So I'm not going to pretend I didn't want him, but I'm also not going to apologise for wanting him. I think he would have been a good signing had we changed the way we played to accommodate him, because you look at his career, he's a proven goal scorer in this league. But he still scored 3 important goals for us that season, 2 against Nottingham Forest and 1 away in Belgium. And I know people say, well, we were always going to win the home tie. We probably would have done. But the reality is we're 1-0 down. Ings got the equaliser, took it back to London Stadium and beat them. Had he not got that equaliser, you just never know. So as far as I don't like to rewrite history. And the history suggests he scored an important goal in Belgium. However, it was a bad transfer. Like you said, he's handled himself really well. He'll leave West Ham thinking I never got a fair crack. And I think he's valid thinking that, because there was some games he played all right and then he was benched the next game. And there was times he played all right and he wasn't even in the squad for the next game as well. So he never really got a fair shot. But I didn't have a huge desire to see him get a fairer crack than what he's got. It was a bad transfer for him, and it was a bad transfer for West Ham, a very expensive transfer to get wrong as well. But I wish him the best of luck, whether he ends up at Southampton again or something. I think he'll go on and do all right in the Championship next. I'll be surprised if he's in the Premier League next season, but I think he'll get a decent move somewhere in the Championship and he'll score goals at that level. But ultimately, I think that's what he is now. He's probably a Championship striker who's had a good run in the Premier League, just not at West Ham. But bad judgment call by all involved in bringing him to the football club. And that leaves Kurt Zouma.
I put down to the run that we had and the European success, which I will call it success in Europe. I think he played a big part in that.
Yeah, I think he was fantastic when he was fit.
Yeah, he was. And there was a lot of players who were just had that little edge, that little bit of experience that you needed to go on and do what we did. And I think that got overlooked a little bit. I think Emerson was another one that just his experience, European football, they knew that they'd been there, seen it and done it. And Zouma was another one who'd been there, seen it and done it in Europe and knew what it was all about. And I think the experienced players that we had in there, really played a big part in that. So I think we've got a lot to be thankful for with Kurt Zouma. At times, just unbelievably solid. Just an absolute rock, just a wall that just you couldn't get past. And yeah, just had some really fantastic spells and fantastic games for us. Such a shame that he couldn't stay fit more. But like I said, he done enough for us. Like what he did give to us was enough to give us some fantastic moments and the best moment that we've had in recent history. So very, very grateful to him, very thankful. But once again, the time's just come to an end, and that's fine.
It's not often I'll say spending £25 million on an injury-prone player is a good deal, but I think we rinsed every bit of value out of Kurt Zouma. When he was fit, I thought some games he played, he was unbelievable, but he was very consistent. He very rarely had a poor game. I think he was really, really good. And even when he was at 80%, he was still one of our better players at times. And if he didn't have the injury problems he had in his career, he wouldn't have been at West Ham. He would have been somewhere playing Champions League football. I genuinely think he had that level of ability. It was just his knees were just gone. But I do think he was a brilliant signing for us, and he's up there with some of the best centre backs I've seen in a West Ham shirt in my life. I do honestly believe that. Also, we had the issue with Catgate, and whether he was ever the best captain in the world, I don't know. It was difficult to tell because he never ever stood in front of the camera or anything like that, so it was hard to tell. But what we do know is he was a big part of the reason that we won a European trophy, and he was a big part of the reason that we had good seasons in the Premier League as well. And I think we've called it right, loaning him out this season and not renewing his contract. And we've done it right. He's been well paid, but I think actually this transfer has actually almost worked out perfectly. And I appreciate that you would either like to have longer from him or you'd move him on for money at the end of his time with West Ham. That was never going to happen because of A, his wages, and B, his injury record. So, yeah, well done to Kurt Zouma, and wish him all the best, whether he stays in Saudi or whatever. I hope he goes on to have another few years playing football and whatever. But yeah, I hope he gets his send off at West Ham one day, because the other 4 will be there on Sunday against Nottingham Forest, and obviously Kurt won't be. but he's had just a big an impact. Maybe not as much as Cresswell on that, but he's had a big impact in his time at West Ham. Anyway, before we talk about, we won't talk about this Sunday coming. We'll do that later in the week. Let's talk about last Sunday. Let's talk about the win at Old Trafford. I think a few people owe you an apology, Frankie.
No apology necessary, Geo.
Someone called you deluded.
Yeah, but mate, if you back West Ham every single time as I do, eventually you're going to go and get one right. But I felt like this was based on fair judgment. I don't think this was a deluded comment. I just believe that, like I said, the comment was they won't score, which I didn't think they would. And I felt like we'd get a couple of goals. It's just, do you know what? It's one of them things that your XG, your Y-Scout, all them other tools that tell you what should happen in football, that's one of them games where if you know football, it goes against all of those tools and what they say and all of the data. You just know that off the back of getting to a European final, your heads are turned. It's totally different emotionally on those games, and you give everything to those days. And we were terrible after playing in Europe, if you remember. I know it's a bit different, West Ham versus Manchester United, but every time we won in Europe, we had a terrible performance in the Premier League. It just happens. That is football, and I just knew that they wouldn't be at it. They've got much bigger things to worry about. Nobody would want to go and get themselves injured or pick up a knock or whatever it is. And I just felt like it was going to be an easy day for us, which I think it turned out that way. So, no, looking back on it, was it a bit of a lucky call maybe? But I do think there was some fault behind it.
What did you make of the actual performance itself?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is where people, you miserable, this is where all the comments will flood in. Look, I don't think it needed anything amazing to go and do that to them. Like I said, they wouldn't be at it. It's a very, very different Man United. What wound me up a little bit, and I know I'm going to get digs for it, our social media account calling it a special day. When we went there and they were the real Manchester United, and we played them in the FA Cup third round, and Di Canio goes and does what he does, and there's 9,000 West Ham fans there going absolutely mental. That's a special day.
Yeah, in 2007, the Tevez goal.
That's incredible. Yeah, exactly. That's special. They're special days. That weren't a special day. That was us rocking up to Old Trafford against a very, very poor Manchester United, who are now below us in the table. They've had an absolute terrible season and have got much bigger things to worry about than playing West Ham. And we just went and done a job on them. And that's it. That's all it was. We went and done our job, and that's fine. Do I now think that's pot of ball that we're going to see next season and all this sort of stuff? I don't know. I wouldn't want to call that, just because I just feel that's not the fair game to call it upon. And as you've said, go and do that against Nottingham Forest, who have got stuff to play for, who also, by the way, are not the Nottingham Forest that they quite were. I almost expect that again against Nottingham Forest.
Yeah, I just seen the form table this morning, and we're 12th, believe it or not, in the form table. Nottingham Forest are 10th. So over the recent weeks, there's not much between the two sides, and like you said, they've got everything to play for. And it's worst case scenario, they get Conference League football. I guaranteed European football is a huge success, but they're still playing for Champions League football when they rock up. I still think that's what we see next season away from home, not just the Old Trafford thing, but Brighton as well. We played the 3-5-2. You go back to Arsenal away when we won 3-5-2. I think we will see the 3-5-2 away from home next season under Potter. And like I said in the video I did yesterday, I don't think the collection of results are that terrible away from home under Potter. And that's without applying the context. I think we've won 2, drawn 2, lost 4. But when you apply the context to some of those results, which is Everton away, last minute goal, dropped 2 points. Liverpool away, last minute goal, lost a point. Brighton away, 2 last minute goals, dropped 2 points. So actually, the performances haven't been that bad, and the results aren't that bad either. So I think what we're seeing is how we will play away from home. I have big concerns with how we're playing at home under Graham Potter, and I don't think he's sussed that out as to what to do next season. But I think the performances away from the London Stadium, how we're going to set up on paper, I don't think he's too far away. And I think Somerville returning will be quite big in the way that we perhaps operate that system next season as well. So I think I've seen enough evidence with Potter at the helm to be confident that that's what we'll do next year on the road, but we'll wait and see. Any players you want to discuss for good or bad reasons?
No, I just want to give a little nod to Kudus because he's coming for a lot of stick. And I thought he was one again who had his tail up. Big parts in both goals.
Yep.
Driving, causing problems, just, not been at the best of form, but I thought he was a real handful and a real nuisance in that game. And like I said, really important in both of the goals. So I thought he was the one who stood out for me. Right,
before we go, Frankie and his son, Albie, did a vlog when they went to the last West Ham game at the London Stadium. It will be on your screen in a couple of minutes' time. It's getting published tomorrow, but if you want to watch it tonight, on Tuesday night, stick around. It will be on the screen. Just click in. You can go and watch it. Frankie, thank you very much. We'll catch up later in the week where we'll take a look ahead to the Nottingham Forest game, because I think my attitude towards the game is going to be a bit different to many other fans' attitude towards the game, but I don't really care. It's my opinion. Maybe I'll get called deluded and then later on in the week. But thank you very much. I've enjoyed that. Thank you.
No worries. End of our season now as well, Geo. Cray Wanderers has come to an end for this season. So we had 2 games at the weekend. Unfortunately, we had a league game, but it was cancelled. The team didn't have enough players. So we ended up playing 2 friendlies, which we won 6-1 and we won 7-5. And that rounded out our season. So we only actually lost overall our first game of the season. And then we was unbeaten over, because, we played 2 games instead of 1 at this age group. So we was unbeaten for the rest of the season. So only 1 loss, which was our first game together. So really proud of them. And they all played in their Hammers Chat kit to sign off the season. And they're very, very grateful.
Did you get 3 points for the team not turning up? Did you get like a 3-0 victory?
Yes, we did. We get the points for that.
I've seen it's like Sunday League football or something in Manchester. It's like, I don't know what the league's called, some Manchester Premier League or something. But basically there's 2 teams going for the title, right? So Team A are playing this weekend against whatever. That's fine. That's going ahead. Anyway, Team B's game has been called off and they've got the 3-0 win because the other team, the opposition season is pretty much over. So they're not turning up and they're going for piss up instead. So this team in Manchester is fuming because the other team going for the title has already won 3-0 this weekend, because the other team have said, nah, we're not even going to bother. We're off to the pub instead for an end of season knees up. So it's brilliant entertainment. I love football. Anyway, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please do drop a like on it by clicking thumbs up. Subscribe to your Hammers Chat. Myself and Frankie will catch up with you at the end of the week. But you want to see Frankie and Albie's day out at West Ham? It's on the screen in just a second. Catch you in a bit.